brings me to two things. First of all, Russia has just cut off a major supply of natural gas to Poland. Gazprom just cut off the gas supplies to two countries that are both NATO members. And it marks the first time of us being able to say, yeah, Ronald Reagan said this would happen. Why did you let them do this? But they have become dependent on Gazprom and dependent on Russian fuel. And now they've turned it off. It's the first time since the Soviet era that Russia reacted this way. So now gas supplies are down. We are not doing anything about it here. In fact, Biden is delaying more things that we could do to help with the gas supply, and he's saying no at this point for environmental reasons. But here's what's really disturbing. Listen to the story from the Washington Examiner. Near the beginning of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, which commenced February 24th, U.S. intel provided to the Ukrainians help that defeated a Russian operation that was meant to wrest control of the airport near Kyiv. They helped, and it gave the Ukrainians the ability to shoot down a Russian transport plane carrying hundreds of Russian troops, according to NBC News. Had Russia been able to maintain the control of the airport, its forces captured it for a short time, Moscow could have used it to solve many of its logistical and supply problems. Various U.S. defense and intelligence officials have spoken in broad terms about the intelligence sharing with Ukrainians while frequently choosing not to get into specifics. However, in a statement, a spokesperson for the National Security Council told the outlet, quote, "We are regularly providing detailed, timely intelligence to the Ukrainians on the battlefield to help them defend their country against Russian aggression, and we will continue to do so." General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told the House Armed Services Committee that, quote, "We have," and I'm not going to reveal in an open hearing, "the intelligence we have collected and how we did all that. But this war has arguably been the most successful intelligence operation in U.S. military history." The chairman also pointed out that the U.S. played significant role in providing Ukraine with the tools to ensure Russia did not achieve air superiority. Quote, "The fundamental significance of air defense systems in order to deny an opponent that ability to achieve air superiority and supremacy, that's what's been done by the Ukrainians. But it was done with a huge amount of help from the United States with Stinger missiles. Also, because of our intelligence feeds." End quote. Why the hell are we saying these things? There is a great article in The Federalist. Listen to this. As the war in Ukraine drags on, the United States is making a clash with Russia more likely with each passing week. What are we to make of a comment from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin that the Biden administration's goal in Ukraine is to see Russia weakened to the degree that they can't do the kinds of things that it has done in invading Ukraine? Austin made the remark in a press conference with the Secretary of State after the pair met with Ukraine's President Zelensky in Kyiv in what was the highest level visit by U.S. officials since Russia invaded Ukraine. One obvious conclusion we can draw from Austin's comment is that the Biden administration is now committed openly to a policy of escalation in Ukraine. The White House intends on keeping the war in Ukraine alive with the stated goal of weakening Moscow by continuing to pour new and more advanced weaponry onto the war-ravaged country. Indeed, Austin and Blinken announced a new round of military aid on Monday to Ukraine, bringing the total amount to $3.7 billion since the invasion began. After resisting pressure early in the conflict to support Ukraine with advanced weapon systems, the Biden administration has changed course. It is now preparing to send heavy artillery, helicopters, armored personnel carriers, anti-aircraft radar systems, advanced attack drones, and other weapons. Austin told members of the press that the Defense Department won't just send weapons, but will expand military training for Ukrainian service members in the region on certain weapon systems being provided. Quote, delivering all of this aid is an escalation of the U.S. involvement in the war. Senior U.S. military officers at a facility in Poland described accelerating logistical network for supplying weapons and material to Ukraine. So they are sending all of this stuff over. They're sending it into Ukraine from Poland by railroad. Now, did you hear that after these clowns were over in Ukraine meeting with Zelensky, that just after they left the country, Russia bombed the train stations? How did Blinken leave Ukraine? By train. Minutes later, they bombed the train stations. Imagine if there would have been a timing issue on that one. What was it the foreign minister said from Russia this week?
Sergei Lavrov. You'll remember him from much of the Trump Russia talk back in the day that the media was so obsessed with. He came out and on state-run media said the danger for World War III was real. The danger is serious. It is real. You can't underestimate it. Also spoke about the possibility of nuclear war being real. And, all of this stuff doesn't make any sense. You're totally right saying, we shouldn't be announcing all this stuff all the time. Even like, for example, the Blinken visit, right? They announced this. Now, what's his face from Great Britain went over there, and we found out about it when he was already there or had already left.
It always happens.
That's the way it always happens. We are instead saying it in advance. So we're like, hey, on Saturday, Blinken's going to be over there, our Secretary of State. Now, that opens you up to all sorts of issues. For example, even the type of thing where a rogue group of Ukrainians, right, who want to draw us into this war could affect that situation. What if one of our officials is over there and God forbid something happens to them? Of course, obviously the suspicion immediately is going to be Russian forces, but it could be anybody. And if that were to happen, we could be drawn into this war. And we tell them in advance we're going to be there. Seems like a massive mistake to me. Luckily, nothing happened. But as you point out, it was pretty close. If they're saying, the Russians are signaling to us, don't come, don't do this, don't be involved in this. And we keep saying, well, not only are we going to be involved in it, we're going to embarrass you publicly by telling everyone that we're involved in it and you can't do anything about it. Now, as Russia gets more and more desperate here and cornered, so what are they going to do?
So let me tell you what some are speculating is coming, and it's the key date of, I think it's May 15th. I'll give it to you here in just a second. So if we look at what is happening over in Ukraine, and you look at where things could head, you have Putin and Russia painted into a corner. Military seemingly teetering on collapse. They have zero replacement capacity for most of the weapon systems that they've lost. Too many high-tech components. And unless he can dramatically change the narrative in Russia, he needs 1 million volunteers to join the army. And that would be a solid 6 months before any of the new recruits could come online. So there's 2 ways he can handle this: surrender or up the stakes. So it's not the 15th, it's the 9th. May 9th is a huge holiday and celebration in Russia. It's the day that they beat the Nazis. And remember, they lost like 20 million people in the war against the Nazis in Russia. It was a horrific thing. So they remember this, and this is a huge day of celebration. There is a shot that May 9th is such an important day that Putin will use May 9th as a launching ground. Possibly, I mean, some people think nukes, tactical nukes, which he will say, oh, we're not bluffing. Your turn. It wouldn't be an ICBM kind of thing. This is a tactical nuke. It would be used, over troops or something like that. But it is a nuke. How would we respond? That could be happening as soon as May 9th. Just say a prayer that everybody stays calm until that goes, and somehow or another we don't inflame the situation. I think it is not insane, historically speaking. The progressives, the Fabian socialists in Great Britain, they wanted World War I. They wanted it with bated breath. They helped egg it along. I just fear that there are those all over the world that feel the same way about this. They want the Great Reset's cover